What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Salt and Light podcast, the number one podcast in the world. You can quote me on that. I'm here with Keenan.
Wait.
Graham someday, and Kurt.
There's got to be a caveat. We can't just launch into that and say it's the number one podcast in the world. What's the subcategory?
I'm not sure.
The best podcast in the world in a community center that has both a turf soccer field and a basketball court.
Okay.
And Kurt.
I was just thinking of cattails. So it's the best podcast in the world where somebody in the room was thinking about cattails.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
That's got to be.
You're not going to find that.
That's got to be true.
Yeah.
That's really.
So I had a question though.
Go ahead.
We're gonna talk about misery today, and so what you're gonna do, Keenan, is you're gonna start us out, and we're gonna go backwards from misery. So you might have an example, for instance.
Yeah.
And so
okay.
so the thing is, here we are in miserable circumstances. How did we get there?
Wow. Does it have to be a personal story, or it could be somebody else?
Could be anecdotal.
Anecdotal. Well, that's
yeah.
Okay. We'll do an anecdotal one. Well, there's a couple, to be honest. Now.
Okay.
I want to really find one that's misery. So here's one.
Okay.
Here's one. You find yourself completely without your family has ostracized you. You're in trouble with the law to nearly its fullest extent, and you're hopeless, helpless, and you feel like you've thrown your entire life away, and you don't know what the next chapter of your life is going to look like. But you know that there's not a single person out there that possibly trusts you anymore.
Could you fill in some of those gaps anecdotally and say what for instance are we talking about? And tell me this: is the person you might be referencing, would they claim Jesus as Lord?
So that's where, in this instance, no.
Okay.
No, at the time of the circumstances unfolding into the misery.
Okay.
But now, yes. Which is interesting, right? So that this misery flipped the heart of someone, and now they've hit rock bottom in such a way that we even see in the Psalms so often that they have no other choice but to look to someone beyond themselves, and namely Jesus. So, fill in the gaps. Immense stress, substance use, infighting within family, with spouse and kids, and then from there, outrageous behavior that you get the cops called on you, and then continued behavior just because you're going kind of manic, and then you find yourself just isolated in your own home, somebody else's home, your childhood home, on house arrest. And so, staring at your father and your mother and what have I done? Right. So that's kind of to fill in the gaps a little bit. I think that would probably be the most real picture for me recently of misery. But from kind of me looking from the outside in, there's immense hope. So anyways, that's kind of, that's the groundwork. How's that?
Yeah.
You ever been there, Kurt?
I don't think so. I might have thought I was there. But each time I, for instance, drop something, and it irritates me, then I'll say I'm suffering. Mostly to make the point that I'm really not, that I've got a long ways to go comparatively to other folks and what they're going through. But the interesting part about that is how can we have joy and suffering? So Jesus basically tells us that that's what we have, that in persecution, for instance, our joy can be complete in him. Yeah. Which is just a strange, ironic dichotomy. How do we arrive at that which we can only have really by his Spirit in us? However, we can say that Jesus is Lord, and misery can then follow that if we don't follow him in
That's
that.
right.
So we put ourselves out there that if you want to be my disciple, you got to pick up your cross and follow me, and put away your selfish ways. If you give your life up for me and for the gospel, then we'll gain our life. If not, we lose it completely.
Yeah.
And so when we go up there, we bought our ticket, so to speak, which was free.
Or Jesus bought our ticket for us. He just had it at the ticket
hands us
booth.
our ticket, and then we neglect our ticket. We are on a fast road to misery.
Or could I even take that analogy a little
You go
further?
ahead.
We have our ticket, we put it in our pocket, and we never actually step into the game,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
We value the ticket so much that we never experience the fullness of what he's actually invited us into.
So in that, there had to have been, we've had to have had a taste of the game in order to feel the misery,
Right.
because there's this sucking vacuum that just keeps looking for satisfaction. So it's like this little snake that just sucking, trying to find satisfaction, and it can't find it. Where is it? Because
When I was
we're
3,
off on our own.
When I was 3, I used to think the vacuum hose was a snake.
Yeah.
That was coming after me. And so now I'm getting some like childhood trauma coming back. So
Going back to last, are you triggered?
yeah, I'm triggered.
To last
Triggered
week?
right now. We had a whole
Triggered.
session once. Yeah. That's good.
A snake going back and forth, sucking.
Yeah,
So-
I didn't like that.
No, you didn't like that?
No, I still don't.
All right. No, it gets you depressed, doesn't it? It's miserable.
It's just weird.
It is
the point.
miserable.
It's point
Adam.
because so here's the sucking. The sucking
Kurt's
is
yelling.
Is this is that you keep looking for something to grab hold to in your vacuum that's going to find satisfaction and you've. Because you have said, I've taken Jesus' ticket, you are not going to find it outside of Jesus.
No.
So you're in this. What's the dude's name? Was it? It was this Greek mythology thing. The guy pushed the boulder up to the top of the hill, and then it would roll down, and he'd have to go do it again. I can't remember. It wasn't Atlas. It was some other.
Yeah, I don't
fella.
know. I don't know.
But so that was his
Archimedes?
his deal. I'm not sure. One of our myriad listeners will send that into us.
Yeah,
Please.
leave a comment.
Communicate with us.
We hope you're out there.
Does that make sense now, Adam? That as much as we are looking for satisfaction, if we have taken Jesus' ticket but ignore it, it's going to be lost on us.
Yes,
that make sense?
Yes, I understand.
You don't have
Okay.
to agree.
All right.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense, yes.
Okay, good.
I understand what you're saying.
Well, I want to make sense.
Adam, talk to me about misery. What about misery?
It's a
What is
Beatles
the-
song. Back one of their first albums. They didn't write it, though.
To be honest with you, I'm not that deep of a thinker. So in my mind, I feel like I'm either sad or not sad. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know the depth of what misery is not necessarily something that I think about very often.
That could be God's grace in your life.
Yeah. That's probably pretty common for a lot of guys, I would think. Not being the deepest of thinkers. I know
Are you profiling?
You guys are definitely deep thinkers, but no,
I
I'm not
wouldn't.
profiling. I'm just calling upon statistics, I guess.
Yeah, that aren't grounded in much.
share your statistics with us, Adam.
Nope.
Could you reference?
I'm not citing my
reference
sources.
those?
Well, it's the same.
Give me your bibliography.
It's the
on
same
this.
database he's drawing that this is the largest podcast in the world. Pastor math. That's what that is.
Yep.
Well, misery is way more of an emotional state than a physical state. It's so relative, but I think that's also the beauty of the way God's created us, and then has just recklessly rescued us through the gospel. That, like Jesus says, you could be in the most miserable. So I know people that have been locked up in federal penitentiary, 100 days on isolation and confinement, where they put you in the whole straitjacket in a padded room. They've gone from
You
I
know a
remember
lot of
this.
straitjacket people, do you?
I could name 3 of them right
I
now.
know some people that should
Right?
be, maybe.
Yeah. So, but in that deep, deep, dark, miserable state that any one of us would say, well, that's probably the definition of misery for me. They somehow came to know Jesus, and it was like, I think sometimes God just allows us to run to the fullest extent of our rope, to the point where we're right there at the end of it, and He says, "This is your lot in life, just so that you could come to know Me." And so many people, I think, they just as much as like these high points in our lives where we're celebrating, and you see all kinds of athletes say like, "Oh, I just thank God for bringing us here," and it's the first time they only reference God when they get the Heisman, right, or like
I try not to
Lombardi,
judge.
Yeah.
right.
I did that
I
when
mean,
I got my Heisman.
So, I'm just saying that it's on these high points you realize you've encountered the divine, because there's no, in their mind, circumstances that would have led to that other than this great path only laid by the bricks of God. But it's no different in misery.
Mm-hmm.
That there's only one hope you can call on, and it's clearly not yourself, especially when you're padded room with a straitjacket on.
Yeah.
And in that, it's not that He wipes away all the consequences, but He somehow meets and brings peace. And that's in the anecdotal example I gave you earlier. That's the case it's playing out. And as things that are so valued in this life are still being stripped away, the misery becomes this storm cloud that's waning, and the sun is starting to shine through. So it's such a different thing than physical circumstance and emotional and mental and spiritual well-being. Misery can dissipate without the circumstances, physical circumstances changing.
And in Jesus, cause and effect starts to get diluted as well. The things that would happen that would send you down a miserable path don't do it as much. And on the contrary side, the things that used to get you giddy don't do that as much either, because what really gets you giddy is your ecstatic encounters with Jesus.
What used to get you giddy before Jesus, Kurt?
Well, just acquiring stuff, maybe. Not big things
a nice
necessarily. It's stuff that I was never into boats or anything like that. Just a lot of work.
Like a nice Swiss Army knife.
Maybe a nice Swiss Army knife, new pair of shoes, something like that were functional, right?
Boats are functional.
I'm all about function, not form. But the
That's why you wear those toe shoes.
But even anything you can start to think of that you might have wanted outside of Jesus that wasn't even harmful.
Sure, right.
Right. Becomes less and less satisfying. Again, that vacuum thing starts to go.
That was loud.
And so what happens, though, on this quest is that as we start to drift over into those places that do not satisfy, we have the Spirit in us that moves us back on the right track, puts us in the groove to say, here's where it is, and it might not seem that way when you're thinking about it, but once you get in there, then it's a wild rock and ride.
Well, I think, and there's two circumstances that we're chatting about. One is somebody that hasn't come to know God, is in this deep misery, comes to know God, and the clouds begin parting. Then, to your point, Kurt, there's a moment where we decide to try to become giddy with the things that were, and that aren't beyond Jesus. They're these things that are of the world, and if they're out of His ordinances, out of His desires for us, that misery is the conviction of the Spirit in us. And man, is that miserable and almost unshakable until we walk out in the paths that God has us walk out in. It could be very specific for people. It could be repentance before God or confession before others, or most times both. But yeah, it's there's a misery there that you feel like there's this burning coals in your gut that you just realize this is a spiritual misery that why would we live in it? Right? And it's the ultimate consequence. You could lose all the other things, but if you're burning deep down in your heart and your soul because of something against God and others, it's like, please, someone quench this.
Yeah. Well,
I'm miserable.
It's training for eternity too, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like we work out now so we feel good next week. Here we we abide in Jesus so that we feel good for eternity, so we enjoy ourselves.
So what does abiding do for you, Kurt, to keep you from misery?
Well, I want to ask you a question first.
What?
Adam. So when we're talking about giddiness,
Wow.
right? And we're talking about the trough of Jesus' joy, right? It's this long thing that kind of like one of those flume rides, right, where you go down and you're just in the water, and
loaded with imagery
it's
today.
just going all over the place. I feel
like
it
Splash
today.
Mountain.
It really,
World.
yes,
Yeah,
I'm going.
really working
I'm
my
deep.
brain here.
I'm like the Mariana Trench right now. What has Jesus, when you're with God, can you relate to a time recently, ideally, where he kind of showed you something that put you on the flume and you raised your hand and screamed in joy? Something like that.
I don't know. When was the last time you raised your
I
hands?
honestly have no idea what you're what you're asking.
When did you come out of your closet with Jesus and you said, "That was awesome. I really enjoy that."
Keenan,
I can't wait to talk to Bob and Sally about this one.
Oh yeah.
I know where you're going, Kurt.
Yeah.
So typically this is a daily occurrence, and I'm so grateful for God's faithfulness, because it's kind of how I know it's not my own brain just trying to convince me. Daily, I usually get up early in the morning, and I'm not an easy wake up, right? I'm not. I like to get out of bed, but usually I'm foggy. It's probably not good how quickly I go down the stairs, because usually I miss a couple of them. But I find myself quickly in this weird fog of, what am I doing with my life? To be completely honest, and thinking, I don't necessarily want to go about my day. And so it's a weird, I wouldn't call it depression, but it's an odd funk that happens almost nearly every day.
Yeah, I get that.
But then I get on my knees, and it's simply just me getting on I usually have a glass of water. I get on my knees, and I put my head in my hands, and I just start talking to my Father in heaven, as Jesus kind of tells me to. And it takes about 30 seconds to a minute. And I have a different deep optimism and hope and peace and joy that it's really inexplainable unless you experience it. And obviously in certain times where I feel like oh man, this is a really heavy situation, I got to deal with this, anytime I cast those to God through prayer and through getting in the Word, it's transformative, and you almost feel like I'm in this long waiting line, and you get zipped up to the log plume ride, and you're on it as long as you want to be on it.
So for my brothers and sisters out there listening to this and say, "Well, I want to flip that switch."
Yeah, come on.
It's not so much that, is it? You kind of have to. There's an investment. In relationship before you get to that place.
Well, and I think for me, in a micro situation, that's me picking up my cross. Jesus is saying, "Hey, my friend, I've died for you. You are secure in me. But if you want to experience abundant life, your cross right now might just look like you getting on your knees and surrender." Which for me humbles my pride. It takes me out of strategy planning mode and puts me more into vision and dreaming and praying mode, right? Some of these vices get turned into what he wants in me. And the second I do and release it to him, there's just a joy that's unexplainable. And
do you have an example specifically?
See,
that comes to mind?
Kurt, you get the privilege of hearing direct words quite frequently from God, and I asked for that. There was one moment, it was last week. I was laying before him a very specific situation that I just wanted to just maintain clarity on. And he said, "I have you, and you're going to be just fine."
Oh, that's good. It's a good word. That's all you needed.
Just that word.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'm sitting there looking at these two situations going, God, I don't know how this is going to play out. Hey, Graham's
back.
We're going to finish it now, right?
Yeah, no,
Since
yeah.
Graham
I like what you're saying, because this
Graham,
is
we're
the
talking
important
about
part,
happiness.
because we're talking about misery.
Yeah,
but we're moving from there. So what you're saying to me in the little phrase that you got, everything's going to be all right, to our listeners, that might seem kind of ho hum.
Yeah.
But to you, it was like a shot of what, Adam? Give me a shot, something that like adrenaline, like a huge, like mega adrenaline.
Well, and here, let me give you an
Yeah.
even better one. So I'm a guy that really, I can feed off of people's words of affirmation and all that stuff. But I recently even have been like, I appreciate it. It doesn't hold a whole lot of weight in my life, right? Because people are going tossed to and fro. And it was a prayer night, probably it was the beginning of the year. And I buried my head into the back of one of the seats, and I just asked, I said, God, tell me I'm doing a good job. And this is what he said. It was the most, and I think I've told you this before, it was the most encouraging, you're not going to think it, it was the most encouraging, best word I could get from him. You're doing just fine.
Yeah.
Not like a, yes, you are. You're more like my son, Jesus. It was, you're doing just fine. And it was such a fatherly voice and assurance that it was more like a sage grandfather, like just putting his hand on your back and saying, you're doing just fine. And it brought me to tears in that moment because it was like my father spoke to my heart. So I get those micro moments.
So I want to mention one just the other day. I kind of alluded to it during prayer night that Adam and I were at yesterday, that I was praying, and you know what he said to me, Keenan?
What did he say?
Okay. He said,
What's up?
He said, Keenan's wife is calling. Do you want to hold on, everybody? Okay, now we're good.
Go ahead.
All right. He said, I trust you. To me. And what is that?
Yeah.
Because I'm supposed to trust God. And I also feel like I don't measure up most of the time. And I mentioned last night as well, I've been reading these biographies I've been listening to biographies of Whitfield and Carey and Taylor and Eliot and all these guys, and Booth. And I'm just thinking I get inspired and then I get discouraged because I can't measure up to those guys. Right. And so, but what he was saying to me is, with what I've given you, I trust you with it. So he's not expecting me to be those guys. And so what it did was it took a lot of striving off of me. In that, essentially he was saying, just like he said to you, everything's fine. Yep. And that's all I needed, because we jump out of his rest. And that's where misery is found outside of that.
Go down the analogy side of things, it's almost like going into a doctor's office where the world, they're always trying to poke and prod and triage and have you been wearing your seatbelt? Do you smoke? And it's like, yes, no, And so they kind of pick and prod to try to, it's like walking to a doctor and before they just go, I know what you need. And there's a gift of medicine and it just takes all your ailments away in that moment. And it's like nowhere else.
A magic elixir.
A magic elixir. Yeah. That's the word I was really looking for.
Sounds like it would be from some huckster in the mid 1800s, pulling a little cart behind with a little monkey with some tambourines and a little grinding organ. But it's not that. It's not that. It's the Holy Spirit in us that does that for us. And that's
the
good
soundtrack
news.
of my brain all
Don't
the
you
time.
think that's good news, Graham?
Welcome, Graham. Hey, talk about misery.
I'm just trying to pick up what you're putting down.
That'd be kind of hard.
We started at misery. We're winding up at abiding.
Kurt, why don't you tell them all the imagery that you shared with us?
We don't need that.
The log flume, at least.
It'd be hard to come up with it again. Just how we really enjoy our ride with Jesus, unless we get out of that. Then, after we've ridden with Jesus for a while, nothing else satisfies. And when we get out of that, we could actually be miserable as believers. But we started, just as recapping from our studio, for our audience as well.
Yes.
We started saying where other people find their misery, and ultimately they have to find Jesus. But even in Jesus, if you're not riding the Jesus stream, you are miserable.
Yeah, that's for sure. Or you're temporarily happy and then miserable in the long term.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which either way leads to misery.
So as we're sitting here, I just get this text message. It just kind of blows my mind.
Yeah.
This is somebody who
breaking news, people.
I just got a text message.
He's never gotten a text message before.
He's so giddy now.
not my anecdotal story. This is a totally different story, but this is a friend of mine who, following Jesus, even in recovery from drugs and alcohol, had enrolled in a Christian college, like wanted to be a pastor.
Nice.
The pandemic put him in a bit of isolation, and he actually relapsed. And so he's shared his story a bunch of different times in different venues. Good friend. And what he did to kind of clear his head and get back on track with Jesus is he said, I'm just going to take a quick hike through the Appalachian Trail. And so completed that whole deal.
Quick hike.
Pretty
Just
easy.
a quick hike. So this is what he texted me, because his burden right now is for men in the church. And he said, how can we remind men who they are and what God's intentions are for them? ? Who are we and what are his intentions, being God's? So this is what he says next. This is not a pastor, folks. Of course, these are questions that he continues to answer for me personally, and there will always be more to uncover. But with what he's already revealed, if we could get their attention and reorient them somehow, there's no telling what that could mean for the kingdom, especially here in Portland.
That gentleman's riding the spirit flume.
So he's on the spirit
Yeah,
flume.
yeah.
And just as we're talking here, an example of somebody who's experienced misery, is now experiencing abiding, and is hearing from the creator of the universe, his Father, to say, there's a kingdom to come in your region, and you get to be a part if you would just abide. And so many of us go, oh, it's left up to the pastors and the spiritual people. No, that's garbage.
That's right.
It's for all of
Come
us. So don't make me stand up, Adam.
Oh,
Me? What?
Keenan's going to stand up.
You can if you want to.
Usually Keenan's standing up during meetings. The
It's
whiteboard is an excuse for you to stand up.
It's a power posture.
Yeah.
Yes, power move.
I feel very
It's-
subservient when
Yeah.
you're doing that. Yeah.
I'm short, Kurt.
Yeah.
It kind of seems like you're compensating for something. I don't know, but
That's
Let's
good.
leave
my-
that for
it's
next
my-
week's episode.
It's my skinny legs. That's what I'm compensating for.
that's it.
My lack of calves.
Well,
Calves.
that happens a lot.
Calves.
Most people, except for Kurt, have lack of calves.
Yeah.
Kurt's calves are actually
Kurt,
very impressive.
you have good calves.
And I don't just dole that out lightly. Like
I think
Kurt
it's the
has
shoes.
Really,
But,
if you ever
what I-
see Kurt wearing shorts,
what I'm
I mean,
feeling now is our
calves, man.
listening audience just hungering for a look at the gams. Yeah.
I think they all just hit pause.
Man, we're sorry. We went from misery to abiding back
was
to
good.
some sort of misery.
yeah,
See, that fulfills our triad for the podcast. Is first of all to have community for people to join, so they're part of our podcast when they're listening.
Yeah.
It's to show Jesus to everybody, and then it's to be entertained.
Well, I hope it is entertaining.
Yeah.
Here's one thing that I'm gonna just throw out there. This is completely unscripted. Sorry, Graham and Kurt.
No, that's
Wait,
okay.
let
The
me
whole
put my
thing's
script away.
What do you mean?
But just going to ask, if you are listening to this podcast, send Adam an email, adam@eastpoint.church.
Yep.
Send him an email. Let him know, 1, you're listening, and 2, put in your vote. Would you like to be able to see us during this podcast? As in, record a
Just
video.
Any affirmation
Yeah.
is welcome.
Just give us any feedback. Yeah, you could literally just say, I listened. Because we know you're out there. We're seeing the statistics, unless it's just Bob and Sally downloading it 56 times a week.
We know
But-
Bill's there. We know Jeff's there.
Please let us
the
know.
numbers have been going up. The last couple days, they've been going up.
If you'd like to see our faces and the antics of the conversation, we could make that happen. I say that. Adam can make that happen, and we can support him.
We'd have to be like,
Well, we'd have to switch rooms probably.
okay.
Yeah, because right now we're in the broom closet.
We're in the dark.
Yes.
But yeah, Adam
In
at
the secret
eastpoint.church. Send me an email.
One more bulb there.
Would love that. Any final closing words, Graham, from our
Closing
riveting?
words. Wow, this is a short podcast.
No, I don't have a whole lot of closing words
Oh.
or opening words for myself since I just got here. Just
Yeah, give
by the
Graham
way,
some
I was
time
just
this
doing
week.
a baptism.
Tell us about the baptism, Graham.
The Dodge family got baptized. Jeanette Dodge and her 2 young daughters.
Hey, come on.
Kayla
Dodged a
and
bullet
Emily.
there.
And so Satan did not want them getting baptized because it was like the second time. So the first time they were going to get baptized, the power went out. Remember that Sunday?
Yeah.
We were all on the turf.
Yeah.
Then the next time they're going to get baptized, no water in the baptistry. which
Oh, yeah.
partially my fault.
Only
But-
partially.
There's a conspiracy.
There is
there's
a conspiracy about
partially
it,
your
but we
fault.
can't talk
Conspiracy
about it
theory.
here.
If you had your ways, you could have totally eliminated that problem, though, right?
Right.
Okay, so
it's
probably
a
totally
rabbit
your
trail,
fault,
and
yeah.
there's a conspiracy around it. I don't,
There is.
We don't. It's not worth going down. But ultimately, the Lord's ways are best, and He worked it all out for His good. So
Yeah.
they just got baptized, and
That's a really spiritual way to let it.
to gloss over my failure.
Yeah.
Yes, I do that a lot. The Lord's ways, He knows what He's doing. It's God's will. So no. But yeah, it was a beautiful family baptism. So
And they're heading to Italy.
they are. Yeah, the girls
Wow.
are.
I said something kind of uncomfortable to the father.
Baptism
I said,
party.
well, I'm sure this makes you a little more comfortable with them getting on a plane. And he kind of looked at me and I said,
Oh my
bad joke.
gosh.
So I had to kind of apologize. It was kind of tongue in cheek.
You mean
I don't
in
know
case
what I
they
was
die?
really. Well, I was just saying
we'll have a
now they'll be flying with,
theological chat next
Wow.
week about
I said, well, now they'll
baptism
be
and salvation.
flying with Jesus.
Right,
and,
right.
and he got it. It was a fun moment. But yeah, kind of foot and mouth moment. So
Right. Yeah, we all have those moments, though. You know.
Yeah,
I know
some
I
more
do.
than others.
wow,
Yeah.
thanks, Adam.
Wow.
Hey, by the
I
way,
didn't say any. I
Yeah,
didn't even look at anybody
A
when
little
I said
salty today on Salt and
that.
Light.
Salty and late.
I just want to prop up Adam's dodged a bullet.
Thank you.
Quote. That was good.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you guys. What do you think the antidote to someone who's experiencing a lot of guilt, like over their experience in religion? Because I've realized after talking to a few people, a lot of people growing up in the church, they carry a lot of immense guilt with them. And I want to ask you guys, why do you think that is? And I think we obviously know what the antidote is, but how do you feel like you can best experience the peace that Jesus has for you in that situation?
Sounds like misery.
It does. You should listen to this podcast, and then you'll have the answer.
Oh, you guys already, you touched on that already?
didn't
We
talk
touched
about
on
guilt.
misery, not necessarily
misery.
church guilt.
Yeah.
But I would lump church guilt into a little bit of misery.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, if we could spend the
Yeah,
next
that could
podcast
be,
talking about it.
Church guilt, yeah.
You want to do
I
church
just
guilt
figured there
next
was
week?
like a 30-second answer to that, but
I would like to know more specifics on that. What are the where do they come from? Where does the
Wow,
guilt come
this is the
from?
cliffhanger.
well, usually, so I've
Yeah.
talked to a
It's
decent
not a
amount of people who
cliffhanger
want to
anymore.
get baptized, and so some of them they experience church upbringings, whether Catholic or different church upbringings, where they feel very guilty. They feel like they've been given a lot of guilt and that they're bad is what they feel like. And I was just wondering, like, what do you think causes that in some churches? And I usually just express how the gospel is not about your actions. It's not about you performing and making yourself worthy in God's eyes, and that's what Jesus is there for, so that they're absolved of that guilt. But what I was wondering, in your guys' opinion, like, what do you think it is about particular people who grow up in the church? Why do they experience so much of that guilt? in
I
their
think
life?
that's a great cliffhanger for our next
Maybe that's
podcast.
something we could talk
That's
about
a great thing to
That's
talk
next-
about next
time.
week.
Yeah.
Wow.
on the Salt and Light.
We
podcast.
planned these.
We've,
See, I'm walking in
never
as
had
if
this
we're
much
10
planning.
minutes in, but
Yeah.
we're not.
We
right
plan.
now, are we?
All right.
No.
That's,
But anyway, guys,
on that
consider
note,
that.
yeah. I hit the wrong button.
Oh man, do you feel guilty?
No
about
one
that?
else in this room can hear it, but
Adam.
a sad trombone just played
Wah, wah, wah.
because we're all sad that the episode's over.
Yes, we
Um,
are.
And I hope you guys are too. Send me an email, adam@eastpoint.church. Send me your feedback, and we'll see you next week with that cliffhanger. See you later.